Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon if you're watching from Mexico. And we are in Mexico for the UCI Hour Record, timed by Tissot. We're looking at the men attempting to break the world record by Bradley Wiggins, which is set at 54 kilometers, 526 meters. This is Aguascalientes in Mexico. We are northwest of Mexico City, a few hundred kilometers. And it's a beautiful track, a very, very fast track.
Maar ik denk nog niet dat je daar ziet wat ik echt kan. En daar is het uurrecord wel voor. Ik denk dat je daar gaat zien wat ik echt kan. En dat ik dus in de buurt kan of het verbreken kan van een record van een absolute wereldtop.
Het doel dat we hebben is het verbeteren van het werelduurrecord van Wiggins. Meter. Zouden we een meter verder zijn dan Wiggins, dan is het werelduurrecord verbeterd. Dus het is, Dion zal in een uur 218 rondes en 27 meter moeten fietsen. Dan is Dion een meter verder. Dat is ons doel.
Yeah, let's introduce the people you just saw on your screen. Of course, the main character of tonight. Dion Beukeboom is his name. He's a Dutch rider. He rides on both the road for the Vlasman Continental team and on the track. He's a team pursuit guy, he's an individual pursuit guy, and he's going to try 1 hour of pure grueling pain to beat that record set by Bradley Wiggins. The other man you saw was his coach, Jim van den Berg, and in October 2017 they came up with the idea that the circumstances by Bradley Wiggins in 2015 were not optimal, and that with optimal circumstances, everything planned out scientifically, etc., they could break this record. My name is José Bain. I'm going to be your host for this UCI Hour Record, timed by Tissot. And I have a friend with me. His name is Nick Stuppler. He's a track cyclist as well. He's Dutch, just like I am. And he knows Dion very well. And maybe he can just give us a very small introduction about this man, because outside of the Netherlands, he might be unknown.
Well, it's already funny that we're seeing Dion not with his typical curly hair, but it's all shaved. We will elaborate on that later. Yeah, Dion is actually perhaps the perfect candidate for this, José. He is not of the caliber of Bradley Wiggins. I think we can all agree about that. But he has a lot of track experience, and he has been able to prepare for this event for a year. And that is a huge advantage. He's also not, the sponsors' interests are not that big, so they could just buy all the material, that's fasted. They have tested that in the wind tunnel. And he has a very high power output, of course, maybe the biggest condition. So I think he can really surprise us.
Yeah, of course, they will not embark on a journey like this one, a journey that took almost a year if they had the idea that they would not be coming close to that 54 kilometers and 526 meters. You heard the coach, Jim, already say on the video we just showed that he has to do 218 laps, which of course is physically very difficult, but also mentally, because it's a 250-meter track like we have on the Olympics and the World Cups and the World Championships. It's a mental task next to being a very physical task.
Yeah, it's 100% physically demanding, but it's also mentally incredibly, it's just incredibly hard effort. Perhaps, it's called the most cruelest of hours. I think that's a very good term. And so strategy is a very big component in this hour record. It's called mental chunking. So it's a little bit the same as Bradley Wiggins did. They are using five chunks of 12 minutes and give him a task for each part, basically.
Very focused look. This is a very dedicated athlete. The hour record timed by Tissot is of course a record which is prestigious. Very, very big names in the past have attempted this, have broken it. Names like Eddy Merckx, Moreno Moser, Tony Rominger, very, very big names. The last man to try it was only a few weeks ago, the Danish rider Martin Toft Madsen. He also did this in Aguascalientes, arguably one of the fastest tracks in the world. That is not only because this is a great track, but also because this track is at altitude. That's a very technical story about air pressure, which we might go into a little bit later. But now we get a good look on this bike, sponsored by his team, Vlasman. That's why the name is on there. Maybe we can have a little look at the equipment, because of course that's vital for an attempt like this.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, he was able to buy all the fastest parts that he needed. They're using a road bike. People may be noticing it's a giant Trinity frame.
It's the same like world champion Tom Dumoulin uses.
For example, yeah. It's very customized, also to his length. For example, they made his seat post a little bit higher. Yeah, and they really tested all the material. You can also see he's riding with flat discs. We can see it here in this image.
If you look at the front, you see that the wheel is not bulging. It's flat.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of times that gives a little bit more a nervous kind of riding style. But apparently it's faster. Also, he's not using a visor on the helmet. They also tested that was faster, which is also, well, I was surprised by that.
Well, you also see it on the road with the riders of the Team Sunweb, that they don't use a visor, but just sunglasses.
Yeah, exactly. And that must be, because they also think it's faster. What else?
Well, we might go into the technical details, because the clock is ticking down. We are now at 35 seconds from this hour. This grueling hour of pain. This guy has been working towards this moment for months and months and months. And during the hour, we will, of course, keep an eye on his progress, which is the most important thing of today. But also, we will talk about his preparation at home in the Netherlands, his preparation in Colorado, and, of course, his preparation here in Mexico, in Aguascalientes.
The gear he is using is 58-14.
We'll go into that a little bit later, because we are just 5 seconds short of the start. And the hour has started for Dion Beukeboom. You see his name on the screen. You might not know him, but maybe after today, it's a name you will be remembering. Of course, it's a very, very difficult task to take on. It's also a very prestigious task, not only by big names like I mentioned before, Eddy Merckx, Francesco Moser, Tony Rominger, and of course Sir Bradley Wiggins, who set this record in the Lee Valley Velodrome in London, the 2012 Olympic Velodrome, which was so impressive with all the crowds that were there. If you look at this track, we are about 2,000 meters higher in altitude. What difference does that make?
Yeah, that makes a lot of difference, because there's less oxygen, and that also makes the air density lower. So you could basically cut through the wind more easy, but you will also have, your power output will be lower. So this team calculated that in the end the net result will be beneficial, but it's very interesting, because I read an interview with, for example, Tim Carrison, who was involved with Bradley Wiggins' attempt, and they said, you lose 10% in power output, and it's just not worth, the lower air density is just not worth it.
We see that he's trying to come up to speed. The most important thing about the hour record is to keep a constant speed, not to do any variations in speed. What is the dedicated speed that we are looking at? because this is, of course, he's now about 1,500 meters in. What kind of speed do we need to get to? Or is it not about speed, but only about watts?
Well, first of all, he doesn't get any feedback, so he's not seeing the speed he's riding and also not the power output. He's getting his lap times though, and I will get into that a little bit later, but they also use the start protocol. And as I understood from his coach, Jim, it would take him about 4 laps to get on full speed. Of course, the average we see below on the screen, you know, we have to calculate the start in that will go up and up and up just because, you know, you have that slow start. We saw he started in a lap of 25.5. That's actually a second faster than Jim anticipated, his coach. So, like I mentioned earlier, 5 chunks of 12 minutes. The first part he will be riding 16.4. So that's basically the time he needs to be riding to beat the record of Bradley Wiggins. Then the second part, he's riding 16.5. But then he has a different task because he has to focus on his lines and position. Then he goes to 16.4 again. Then the fourth part is 16.3, and the last part, you know, whatever he has left in his tank. So they really try to, you know, break it up in pieces, and especially that second part, you know, he goes a little bit slower. So then he's riding below his threshold, and then they found a new task for him to focus on his lines and his position.
That is very much due to. We listen to Matthias Brentle.
I tried to find something about him in the internet. I tried to find out what results he had. Okay, he had some good time trials, but he never won a race. I don't know what he did on the track, but it's really hard to believe that a rider which is not really known on time trials. I'm not a specialist from track, but speaking from the roadside, I have never heard his name. The Hour Record actually is not only about being a famous rider. It's being about having a fast line on the track, having a good material, have a fast setup. So I think he can have a chance because if you make something, you don't go into the television and want to blame yourself. So for sure he thinks about it, and they made some tests, his coach or his sponsor. So somehow he must have a chance to do it. Maybe the chance is not so high, but it would be really cool, like if a rider like him could tackle and show the world that it's not about the name, that it's just about the numbers, about being aero and being fast on the track. My advice for Dion before the Hour Record attempt would be like to really pace yourself for 40 minutes. Maybe also make the mistake that after maybe 30 minutes you go just 5 minutes over your speed, what you want to do, to really feel what happens to the body. You have to really find out your pace and try to really not overpace, otherwise you will pay it in the end really badly.
This was, of course, Matthias Brentle. He held the record. He set the record on the 30th of October 2014 in Aigle in Switzerland, the UCI Cycling Centre. 51 kilometres, 852 metres was his record. He beat the record set by Jens Vogt. The next record holder in history was Rowan Dennis. He did that in Melbourne, 52.491. Then Alex Dowsett was the next one in May 2015. With 52 kilometers, 937 meters. And then we made a huge leap forward with the new record. Only a month after Alex Dowsett did it, by Bradley Wiggins, he did over 1.5 kilometer more than Alex Dowsett. And a very interesting thing said by Matthias Brentle was, it's not about the name, it's all about the power. And he started his story with the introduction that he had been looking on the internet and he had no idea who this rider was. He could find no significant results. That is, of course, a question that many people have. But this is absolutely not a bad rider. You can see by his style, you can see by the way he rides that he's a pure track rider. He is an individual pursuiter. He has been Dutch champion many times over. But he also was 4th at the National Dutch Time Trial Championships this year, even beating Jos van Emden, who came in 1st in the Giro d'Italia time trial last year. So we can also say, Nick, that his efforts going into this world hour record timed by Tissot has also been beneficial to his road racing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, it's actually already has been a successful project so far for him personally. Of course, the goal is to break it. You know, they've calculated it. They think it's possible. As Bradley said, it's not about the names, it's about the numbers. So let's talk numbers.
Yeah, that's very important. And Nick, we should really avoid getting too technical about the numbers because nowadays we know that from Team Sky, for example, everything is about watts. But an attempt like this, it's just a fact. Everything is about watts.
Yeah, absolutely, but that's the part for the preparation. Dion should not be thinking about numbers, and he isn't. But he's able to produce 445, 45 watts over an hour in time trial position. He's done that on the road, but that's at a low altitude. And I talked to his coach, and they are anticipating he can have a power output of 420 watts.
Constantly.
Yeah, on altitude here. So that would only mean a drop of 25 watts. To me, that seems optimistic, but you know, Jim really has thought it out well. So you know, that's just very interesting. If you look at the watts that Bradley Wiggins was producing, we're talking about 440. But
on sea level.
On sea level, and also in very, very bad conditions. That's also something we have to mention. Bradley Wiggins, his record attempt was in very bad conditions, and then we talk about the air pressure, which was extremely high that day. And to compensate for that, they also had to bring up the temperature to about 30 degrees, where you can say that 28 would be ideal, because, you know, getting rid of your heat is also very important. Your body spends a lot of energy trying to get rid of the heat.
Well, you know that from yourself. If you try to climb a mountain with 35 degrees in the Alps or the Pyrenees or in wherever you want to climb a mountain, or to do it in 25 degrees, it's a huge difference, because every energy spent by your body is on heat dispersion is something that you cannot use for the proper attempt on the bike. If we look at the times now, he's about level pegging with the schedule of Bradley Wiggins at the moment. Maybe nice to mention as well that the women's record is currently held by Evelyn Stevens, the lovely Evelyn Stevens. She did that in Colorado Springs in 2016 at the end of her fantastic career, 47 kilometers and 980 meters. And we've also been talking about, we've been talking with the coach of Dion Beukeboom, Jim van den Berg, and there's only one woman in the world who might be ideal to attempt that hour record, and that is also a Dutch woman, Ellen van Dijk, former world champion in Italy, in Firenze. So far, so good. He is staying very close to the lines. We will go into that a little bit later. If you have any questions, just let us know, and we will try to get into that if it's not too technical. Nick, if you look at how Dion is riding at the moment, he is sitting completely still with his upper body, which is, of course, the trademark of a fantastic time trial specialist. Also, the positioning of the arms, everything's been planned and tested in the BioRacer wind tunnel testing in Belgium, not far from where Dion lives. And also the suit that he's wearing is custom made by BioRacer. It's been made exactly to his body, not to have any piece of cloth try to hold him down. So that is everything that went into the preparation. And especially in the wind tunnel, they've been doing a lot of testing about his posture, about his position on the bike, which is, of course, very, very important, because everything that blatantly said sticks out slows you down.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, the hour record, it's all about aerodynamica and power output. If you see that, you know, you got basically two big forces to propel your bike forward. Those are gravity and wind resistance. Of course, gravity is not an issue here. And then you got two little forces, which is tire and bearing drag. and they all work against you. So wind resistant, of course, is exactly what it sounds like. You're pushing through the air, and tire and bearing drag are due to the energy that gets converted to the heat in your tires and bearings.
And, well, if you hear the word drag, it's a very ugly word to start with, but it's something that slows you down. There's not a lot of crowd here. If you compare it to the attempt that Bradley Wiggins did in 2015, the Lee Valley Velodrome was packed. It was also a publicity thing, and that's also something that the people behind this UCI Hour attempt, powered by Tissot, say. The circumstances on that day in June in 2015 in London were not ideal. There were a lot of people, the weather was not ideal, it was on sea level, and those are the things that they all try to eliminate here. So there's hardly any people, but there are very interesting guests here. For example, Thomas Dekker, he is visiting here, and he also tried to do the record in 2015. 52 kilometers and 221 meters was that. It was only 250 meters short of the record at that time set by Rowan Dennis.
Yes.
We have some questions about the music. You can hear the beats blasting in the velodrome here. This is a playlist on Spotify that Dion made himself. Of course, you need some up-tempo songs, and if you're riding with music yourself, you need you need a certain beats per minute to get that point. But we've been past the first 12 minutes, so we now get into the second segment of 12 minutes. So this second segment, Nick, what is this all about?
So he is supposed to go a little bit slower in this second segment. So, you know, we see that he is behind schedule. That's also anticipated. He wants to speed up towards the end, which is, you know, that's a very surprising strategy, you could say, because a lot of riders want to ride with negative splits. So, you know, they know they're a little bit ahead. I was mentioning earlier the first part he was aiming to ride 16.4. And then the second part, which we have arrived in now, up until, let's say, 24 minutes, he is supposed to ride 16.5. Well, we see in the left bottom of the screen, he's riding 60.6. And so he's, quite honestly, you say, at the moment, he is slower than he should be riding.
I also feel that he's not keeping his ideal line.
Well, it's not that bad. He is most of the time riding on the black line. You know, that's of course the line with the least amount of meters. But it's not unfamiliar that riders on the straights go a little bit more up. That's also not so bad. If you ride higher in the track in the corners, that is very bad. So he needs to try to maintain that black line. If we look at the attempt of Thomas Dekker, for example, then you know, he was obviously a road rider, and sometimes he was even going you know, above the red line, and that's just costing you, in the end, after an hour, that's just costing you a lot.
Well, this guy spends a lot of time on this bike. He has been spending a lot of time on this bike. This morning, of course, he had some breakfast. He's been here for a few weeks already to get used to the time zone, to get used to a different climate, and also to get used to the track. One of the things that he has been avoiding, you can see some timing there on the iPad by Jim van den Berg, that he's 4 seconds under the schedule at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's
very
looking good. 57 laps at the moment, 14K in.
Let's compare the distance he's ridden so far. I measured it in the first 15 minutes, and he had a distance of 13.43 kilometers. And if you compare that with other attempts, then Bradley Wiggins was about, we don't know exactly, we just took the average of his attempt, but he should have had about 13.6 kilometers. But for example, he is ahead of Madsen, who had 13.3. So, you know, it's not looking bad. It's just a little bit slower, I think.
We can see that he's keeping quite a constant speed at the moment, quite constant lap times as well. He's also designed his playlist to get to some very difficult moments. And if you're riding your bike yourself, you know that there's always very difficult moments on the bike. And whether that is after 40 kilometers into a climb or nothing, everybody has those moments. Do you know what the moments are that Dion fears the most?
I actually haven't asked him that question, but it's very interesting. You know, a lot of times the middle part is the hardest because you've already done a lot. But then, you know, you still got a lot of distance to cover ahead of you.
Sorry. No,
this is Alex Dowsett.
I've never heard of him. Not at all. I mean, I read that if it was first announced, I read that he was going, and yeah, I mean, good luck to the guy. Obviously, it's a scary prospect for anyone wanting to go again, because I would put him in exactly the same. If Matthias Brandl or Rowan Dennis or someone said, I'm going again, Bjorn, what's her name again? Bjorn Beukeboom. Sorry. But it has exactly the same effect, because is Bjorn, Rowan, Matthias going to make life harder for me for when I go again? Is 54.4 now going to be 54.8 when I go to get again? I want to beat Wiggins fairly and squarely. I want to beat him at sea level. So I would probably opt for Manchester again if the choice was completely mine, which normally it isn't. And then afterwards I'd like to go to altitude and see just how quick or how far we can go. But yeah, the home crowd as well, it's just everything. You know, you've got to understand, even though it is a man and machine against the clock, it's an event as well. You know, we sell tickets, the sponsors. Without all of that, the event doesn't happen, which is why we opted for Manchester. So, and the Manchester track is one of the fastest in the world. It's probably a faster track than Aguascalientes, but it's at sea level, obviously. Not in an ideal world, you'd lift Manchester up a couple of 1,000 metres. I will be watching, and I will watch with as much interest as I would do if it was anyone else, because it's fascinating when you pick things up as well. And these guys that do it off their own back, they're not tied to any sponsor, or they're not tied to many sponsor commitments. They can use the fastest equipment and techniques possible, so we can learn a thing or two from them. And I know certainly from Martin's attempt and for Dion's attempt, I will be watching very closely for my own attempt. If Dion was to break the record, it would just show the world that the record is breakable. Because at the moment, everyone's come up short.
Well, the story by Alex Dowsett was also about the relatively unknown rider that we see on the screen at the moment. Alex Dowsett, he did his record attempt in 2015 in May. It was a very busy year that year, with Rowan Dennis, with Jack Bobridge, with Thomas Dekker, Gustav Larsson, Dowsett, and of course Wiggins. Dowsett did 52 kilometers, 937 meters. It's the second time at the moment. And he said, Nick, that the track in Manchester was probably just as fast as the track here in Mexico. Of course, world records are set on this track in World Cups, World Championships as well. 500 meters, thousands, very fast track, but the sea level thing is the most important thing here.
Yeah, absolutely, and apparently also Dowsett thinks, you know, it's not that beneficial to go to altitude. So, and also if we look at his lap times now, Jose, we have to be honest, he is going too slow.
Yeah,
and
he's lacking behind.
Yeah, he's even slow by 0.4 per lap, and that's really, really big, unfortunately for him. I mean, he's still at a fantastic pace, but you know, I would almost say that, or I would say that, you know, the hour record is not going to be broken tonight, as it looks now.
I think there's a very important thing that we have to add here, and that is the weather. For 2 weeks straight, it has been beautifully sunny weather here in Mexico, in Aguascalientes. And this is actually the first cloudy day in 2 weeks' time, which means that the air pressure goes up. It's well above 1030 at the moment, and you need relatively low pressure to have less resistance, less drag to beat this record. So when they looked out of the window today, they could not have been happy.
No, and it's also mentally just, you know, a blow in your face. And of course you have to prepare for that. And but, you know, it's not motivating, of course, if the conditions are working against you, especially if you travel that far to have a lower air density. So that could be one of the factors. We see he's picking up a little bit pace here now.
His lap times are going down at the moment. At the moment, he's about 3/4 of a lap behind the time that Sir Bradley Wiggins said 3 years ago. But he's picking up the pace a little bit. Let's go back to something that I did not complete earlier on, and that is the breakfast that he took. He's been avoiding certain foods, especially red meats, which of course we all know is very important for endurance riders to have red meats. But we are in Mexico where clenbuterol is a big problem. So he's been avoiding all red meats to not be in any trouble with doping control. And this morning he had some pancakes, some muesli, some yogurt, and that was it. The last Dutchman doing this attempt, Thomas Dekker, he kind of, what's happening here? He's on the Côte d'Azur. Is that good?
Well, it's not that bad if there's not, you know, it's not that bad. Actually, they were riding with the motorbike a lot on this bike to basically sandpaper the surface a little bit, especially also
make it smoother.
Because there was a lot of dirt and other stuff on there, and you know it has to be as smooth as possibly can be. We see his mom cheering his son, of course, a very special moment for her as well.
Lap times are going up a bit at the moment.
These higher lap times are also very bad for, you know, he chose a certain gearing. He's anticipating, as I understand, about 105 RPM with this gear. They were even anticipating using a bigger gear before. They changed it a little bit. So yeah, he's riding a lower cadence now as he would like, and that's also very, very bad.
We're going towards 24 minutes in this UCI Hour Record timed by Tissot. This is Dutchman Dion Beukeboom. He rides for a continental road cycling team called Vlasman. And he is attempting this record currently held by Sir Bradley Wiggins on the Lee Valley Velo Park in London, that beautiful Olympic track, of which Bradley Wiggins, of course, has very fond memories. Who can ever forget the world medicine title that he and Mark Cavendish took on that track, and the crowds that were ecstatic. It's one of the one of the moments which really gave me goosebumps in track cycling history.
So we were saying Dion is riding about 420 watts. Well, because he's going slower, that is probably lower. But he's also having a difference in power output on the corners and on the straights, where in the corners he was anticipating about riding 450 watts, and on the straights 380 towards 390. So that's also one of the characteristics of an hour attempt which suit a track rider really well. Actually, the ideal rider, if you talk about an ideal rider, you gotta have track experience, but you also gotta have a very high threshold. That's super important. So if you talk about the ideal rider, I would say a guy like Bradley Wiggins, under ideal circumstances, nobody can be faster.
He's currently 1 lap behind the schedule of Bradley Wiggins. We saw in the previous lap that his lap times were going up towards 19, which is towards 17, of course, which is bad, and he's still losing 2 to 3 tenths of a second every lap to the current record. And you can also see at the speed, it kind of stalled at 53.6, and of course we need to go to 54, and we're almost halfway the attempt. Nick, is there some point of no return or is it something that you're going to finish nonetheless, despite the air pressure, despite maybe some unforeseen circumstances? Is he going to do the hour, or is he going to say, well, this is not what we had hoped in terms of weather?
Well,
we're going to try again in a few days.
I definitely hope he's gonna, finish this for his own sake. He's been working towards this, and he's still, 53.6 is still the second time.
Ever.
So it's definitely not a bad result. And if he felt he didn't have the power to beat the record, then it's actually very wise to ride a slower pace, because if you blow up your engine, then there's no recovery. You're building up lactate, and everything goes to shits.
Back here in Aguascalientes with Dion Beukeboom. He's currently riding at 53.57 k an hour. We're almost halfway into this hour, and of course everything will be starting to hurt. This position, we already know that this position is pretty hard. If you look at pursuiters, team pursuit, individual pursuit, they do 3 to 4 kilometers, depending on whether it's women or men. How hard is it to have your shoulders tucked in, to have your elbows almost touch the other one?
Well, for a lot of people it's very hard, but Dion has the mobility, for example, in his shoulders, in his hips, to have this position. So actually, if he, the discomfort for him now is that he's just, riding his guts out basically. But he should be able to ride in this position reasonably comfortably for a long time, because else you're just spending energy in maintaining that position. So you can also see, the difference within the past. His bar is very high now. That's the fastest position within the UCI reels at the moment. But you got to have very mobile shoulders. You got to be able to have that, that hip position, that angle.
He's a very tall guy.
Yeah, very tall. But they measured for his height. He's actually very aerodynamic.
And how can that be? Because he's over 2 meters.
Yeah, that's just your body composition. That's how everything integrates together. And with Dion, that's just one of the things you can't train also.
He's losing time fast now at the moment. This is not looking good for the Dutchman. His lap times are going up considerably. He's losing about... we're looking to Francesco Mose.
È come una cronometro. Solo che le cronometro si parte tutti nello stesso giorno e quello che è più forte quel giorno vince. Il record dell'ora esiste già un tempo stabilito e bisogna battere quello. Questo è il record dell'ora. Poi è una corsa particolare dove c'è bisogno di una grande concentrazione, di una grande preparazione e gestire per un'ora uno sforzo continuo al limite delle possibilità. Bisogna prepararsi anche psicologicamente a correre per un'ora senza pensare ad altro, perché tu devi pensare solo a quello che stai facendo e ogni giro di pista, io ne ho fatti 150 circa, adesso non mi ricordo, devi cercare di fare una velocità costante, non con degli sbalzi, sempre molto regolare, altrimenti il fisico poi ne soffre. Insomma, se tu vai un momento ai 53 all'ora, un momento a 48, questo non va bene, vai a 51, 52 massimo. Questo era il range che noi abbiamo fatto tutto l'ora, poi gli ultimi 2 o 3 giri uno sa che è finita, dà tutto quello che può, insomma. E per fare il record dell'ora bisogna saper dosare lo sforzo, questo è importante, andare sempre al limite massimo, non superarlo, perché se tu vai in debito dopo non recuperi, perciò bisogna cercare, si corre con una tabella. Allora adesso il record è di Wiggins è 54 e 500, deve fare una tabella con 100 metri di più di quello che è Wiggins e lì deve concentrarsi su quella velocità. Se ce l'ha nelle gambe può continuare, se non ce l'ha bisogna che si ferma, perché non è che non serve a niente fare 53 per dire, non conta, non è un record, no? Sarà il record suo personale ma non il record assoluto.
Yeah, Francesco Mose, winner of the Giro d'Italia 1984. That was also the year that he set the world record at 50 kilometers, 808 meters. Also here in Mexico City, well, not in here, but in Mexico, I mean. And he said, well, a time trial is something you do on a certain day against each other. A world hour record is a fight against yourself. It's about focus, it's about continuous strength, it's about constant power, and it's mostly a mental game. You have to think of nothing else. Basically, you have to think of nothing. Your head needs to be empty. And you also have to be very careful with how you race it. Not overdo it in the beginning, or else you will blow up. And do not cross your own limits. Do not exceed your own limits. It's a time trial in itself, but it's a very, very mental game. And you have to keep focused on that speed, on that cadence, and not maximize the speed one lap and then go down on the other lap. But we are past half an hour, Nick, and we see that his lap times are going down again.
Yeah, I think they did an intervention there by going. You know, he was just going too fast for what he's capable of, and by going slower, you can actually recover a little bit. And now he's going down again, which is a good sign.
How are they communicating with him?
These are all strategies they've already talked through. You know, Dion can almost not hear through the helmet. So, you know, Jim is just, you know, he's having an iPad with the lap times. So that's where Dion gets his information. But I guess they have talked through all of these scenarios. And, you know, I think Dion is clever enough to feel this himself. He's been, you know, training on pacing, you know, which is the most important thing. Because if we talk about threshold, so that's the most important factor. And in simple terms, the lactate threshold is basically how hard you can ride for a prolonged period without blowing up. And maybe we saw earlier that Dion was blowing up a little bit. So he went up a little bit, and possibly that, you know, that's gonna enable him to finish his record.
Well, let's be fair. He's now at 53.3. If we look at the record, which is of course over a kilometre down on the record set by Sir Bradley Wiggins. So we must be fair, we must be honest. Yeah. He's not going to break that today.
No, but and actually he also lost, let's say, the second place because Madsen rode 53.3 kilometers, which is about what Dion has now. But he rode,
they're about on the same pace at the moment. It's about they're 37 meters. He's 37 meters behind that schedule of that Danish rider.
Exactly.
Is that something that he knows? Is that something that he has in his head, all these schedules? Or is it just focused on that iPad, seeing his lap times and seeing that his lap times are up? They're well over 17 seconds at the moment. And he knows what kind of lap time he needs to achieve to get to that 54K and a half. And his lap times are going up. But this is not a flat schedule anymore.
No, it's actually the opposite what you want to have. You want to be riding, you know, each lap the same lap time. That's the most efficient. Acceleration and deceleration always cost you energy. So we're seeing 70.3 now as well. It's just too slow. Also, what I mentioned earlier, they were anticipating, let's say, 16.4, 16.5, and that has an RPM of 103 or 105, and he's below 100 now.
There's a very important change. They looked at the weather. They planned on doing a certain gear. That was the plan. A certain gear powered by a certain cadence, a certain rounds per minute. So that's the kind of rounds that you do per minute on the pedals. But they chose to do a different gear. The plan was to get one gear up from Bradley Wiggins, 59.14.
Yes.
And just this evening or this afternoon in Mexico, they decided to do 58.14, which is a huge difference, which means that your cadence needs to get up, and that's something that you have not trained for.
Yeah, but he's riding a slower cadence now because he's riding slower. So, you know, they were talking about one, actually a small change in gear, and what we see here is a huge difference in cadence. So, it's just basically, honestly, Jose, it's just riding home now for Dion. He still has a phenomenal pace. I think if he can stay above that 53 kilometers per hour, that would be amazing.
Of course, there's no doubt about it. It's a very impressive thing that he's doing, but of course we're doing an hour record here, and he is at the moment 1.3 kilometers behind the schedule of Sir Bradley Wiggins. Interesting thing said also by Alex Dowsett is that he wants to do it again, he wants to try it again, and he wants to beat the hour record by Wiggins. Preferably in Manchester.
He's one of the guys that can do it.
Oh, we have an interview with Thomas Dekker.
Het grote doel van hem dit jaar het werelduurrecord aanvallen. En ik heb het op deze baan ook gedaan. En ik dacht, ja, hij kan wel wat support gebruiken natuurlijk. En dit is een van de zwaarste onderdelen die we hebben in de wielersport. Het is een uur lang vreselijk diep gaan. En ja, dat zie je nu bij Dion ook wel, dat het niet meevalt.
Ja, je zegt het al, in 2015 ondernam je hier zelf een poging op het aanval. Hoe is het hier om terug te zijn?
Ja, dat was wel even apart natuurlijk toen ik hier weer aankwam. Je ziet, het is mijn laatste wielerwedstrijd ooit geweest. En daarna was mijn carrière over, dus het is ook een soort van dubbel. Maar ik ben wel heel blij dat ik het met het uurrecord heb kunnen afsluiten.
Ja, je geeft aan, je carrière was hier voorbij. Wat doe je nu?
Wat ik nu doe, ik heb de afgelopen tour heb ik dingen gedaan voor de radio, wat voor tv. Ik heb de Giro gedaan voor het Algemeen Dagblad, dus ik ben wel een beetje betrokken in de wielersport.
Ja, even terug naar Dion. Je zegt aanval op het wereldrecorduur. Je kent Jim van den Berg. Denk je net zoals hem dat hij het gaat lukken om het record van Bradley Wiggins te verslaan?
Nou, het ziet er in principe niet zo heel goed uit. Hij heeft al best een behoorlijke achterstand en realistisch gezien gaat hij dat niet halen vandaag.
Nee. Je weet het zelf vanuit 2015. Wat kan Dion er nu in deze fase nog doen?
Nou ja, er komt nu een kritische fase. Het zwaarst voor mij was tussen 35 en 50 minuten. En hij weet natuurlijk dat hij achter ligt, dus dat werkt niet goed in je hoofd. Dus ja, hij zit met twijfel en hij kan niks anders doen dan alleen maar doorbeuken.
Dankjewel.
I will translate this for our non-Dutch viewers, of course. This is Thomas Dekker. He did the hour record in 2015. It was the last race of his career. He had a very impressive career. Also had some results taken away from him because of a doping suspension. But he did 52.221 kilometers, and he said, "I know how hard it is, and I know that Dion could need some support, so that's why he's here." It was weird for him to be back here in Aguascalientes, where he did his attempt in 2015, because it was his last race. He has some mixed feelings about that, but he's still happy that he finished his career with this hour attempt. Thomas Dekker is also realistic, says, well, he's not going to do the record today. It's also something that he cannot correct anymore at this point. And Dekker said that his most difficult minutes were between 35 and 50, so that's the time zone in which Dion is currently riding. And Dekker said, well, Dion knows that he's behind schedule, and that will not help him mentally to endure the pain. And for those who are interested, Thomas Dekker is still active in cycling. He does some things for Dutch cycling media, works as a commentator, for example, and was also on site at the Giro, where he saw fellow Dutchman Tom Dumoulin come in second this year behind Chris Froome. Chris Froome, is that a rider who could be attempting an hour record like this? He's a great time trialist.
Yeah, exactly. Physically, he definitely has great capabilities for an hour record attempt. However, you also need to be comfortable in a track, going into those corners, maintaining your lines, maintaining your position. So it would require a lot of training for a guy like Chris Froome. But it would be amazing if he tries. This is a very honest discipline. And that makes it actually one of the most beautiful, in my opinion. There are no competitors. You can schedule this attempt when you're in the best shape of your life. It's not dependent on a route, hills or corners or weather. So yeah, it's really an honest race.
Yeah, that's also something that Francesco Moser said. It's a very honest discipline. but that won't help him because he is approaching that 53-kilometer limit, which means that he's probably going to drop below that pretty soon. His lap times are still going up. The last 20 minutes of this UCI Hour Record by Tissot have started, and something that Dekker said, that the pain is going to become unbearable, especially knowing that he's not going to make it.
Yeah, so kudos to him that he's still, going for it. We also saw his girlfriend, his family traveled to Mexico with him. And she's also a shareholder because, as I understand, Dion has been preparing in a tent, in an altitude tent, and it gets very warm inside, and especially in Holland, leading up to this to flying to Mexico. It was very warm.
Yeah, it was unusually warm this summer.
And it gets even warmer in that tent. So, and she's also been sleeping in that tent. So, a lot of people are involved, and I think he wants to, prove that he can finish this for himself, and also to, his family and friends.
If we look at some times, of course, the record by Bradley Wiggins is 54.5. That was a huge leap that we made all of a sudden in that record from Alex Dowsett to Bradley Wiggins, and that was 1 month. One was in May, the other was in June, one in Manchester, the other in London. The second time held at the moment is Martin Toft Madsen. He did that at the end of July here in Mexico as well, but he's dropping behind the 53K. 53K is also the record. It was not a record, but the attempt. What is happening here? He's left that aerodynamic position, Nick.
Yeah, I think he wants to stand up a little bit, but yeah, this is costing you. Yeah, maybe sitting problems as well. But that's not a good sign. That's you want to avoid this.
He's dropped below the 53, so he's now also dropped below the time of American time trial specialist Tom Zerbel in 2016, also here in Mexico.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're now also below the attempt by Alex Dowsett in Manchester. So things are not looking good. Is this something that he might be trying again? What's your estimate on that?
Well, I doubt it. I think, some guys, like Alex Dowsett, wants to try it again. I think it's a very hard thing.
But he actually held the record.
Yeah, and he also ran a conservative pace. So basically, you can say he could have gone faster. So there's potential there. Maybe the same counts for Dion, because this is a far from ideal attempt. But I think if you tried it once, if you gave your everything, and you know what's possible, and if you can't break the record, then I would say one attempt is enough.
A lot of planning went into this.
A lot of planning, and a lot of money as well.
Yeah.
So if we talk about the sponsor of Dion, which is also the main sponsor of his team, Vlasman, it's a local demolition company, and that's just, I find that amazing that they're just cycling enthusiasts.
They're very passionate about it.
Very passionate, and they fund this guy to and his whole team to prepare for this event, and that's just amazing. We need more of those people in cycling.
Yeah, it's all privately funded, basically, this entire attempt. And they started planning this in October. Also, Jim van den Berg, who has a coaching business, it's also been about the journey towards this attempt. He takes a lot of what has been going into this, a lot of the planning, a lot of the testing. He takes this into his coaching business. So it kind of cuts both ways. Of course, it's publicity, but it's also been very important for his coach and also for Dion, because if you can do this, Nick, you can also ride at the front of the peloton in big races and pour out the watts.
Yeah,
this guy could ride at pro continental level if he can reach this watts constantly.
He's winning races at let's say the third division of cycling, so the continental circuit, and he's a guy that just can do an attack in the last 2 kilometers and stay ahead of the whole bunch, all the sprinters trains that are preparing the sprints. So he is special in that way, and I think he would make a great rider to have in your team, to ride at the front, whether it be for your sprinter or your classification guy. So maybe he's not a winner. And we also have to say this is a pursuit specialist, which is very different than, let's say, a guy who does time trials over an hour, where the threshold, it's all about the threshold. Because
I know a certain pursuit specialist who just won the Tour de France.
Yeah.
Geraint Thomas.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the remarkable, guys, But then you're really changing the way your body operates, and also in the case of Thomas, that has taken some time. But yeah, again about the threshold. If you go about above your threshold, your body is basically producing more lactate than it can process. So, and then it gets shipped off to your bloodstream, and then that's when everything goes to when it starts to
hurt,
be really painful. Yeah.
We're going to the last quarter of this time trial attempt. His times are going up, which automatically means that the speed that we are trying to achieve, or the speed, or the maximum distance that Dion is going to achieve, is going down as well. We cannot even fathom what is going on in his head, the suffering that goes into this, the pain,
you just
and of course everything. Yeah, but do we need to pity him? Is that something?
No, pity is definitely not the word. I think we can have empathy for the pain he's experiencing right now, but of course it's voluntary. Yeah, let's be honest. So, I'm sure he wants to do the best he can, and I'm very curious what he's going to say afterwards, what went wrong, or because they know what he's capable of. They've done testing. They've already done an hour record in Alkmaar. Unfortunately, he couldn't finish that record, but that was also about 53 kilometers pace. So. They know what he can do over an hour in this position. So
I think it's pretty impressive what he's doing at the moment, because his lap times are going down again. We were at a 17:0, 17:1 at the moment. So his lap times are going down at the moment. Of course, yet again, he's not going to break the record. 54.5 is the record by Sir Bradley Wiggins, and currently he is at a schedule of 52.8. As we can see, still faster
than a guy like Rowan Dennis,
and still faster than Thomas Dekker. So then he has a Dutch national record, which is a very small consolation prize.
If we talk about the first universally accepted record, that was in 1876 by the American Frank Dodds, and he rode 26.5 kilometers, Jose. So
kilometers or miles?
Kilometers. It was 16.4 miles, and that was on a penny farthing bike.
No way.
Yeah. So for the people unfamiliar with those bikes, I had to look it up myself.
Google them.
Yeah.
It's hysterical.
It's one of those bikes with a huge front wheel.
Yeah. This is amazing, Nick, because his speed is going up again. This is mentally very, very strong what he's doing at the moment, and
he's surviving. Huh?
His speed is increasing considerably at the moment. He's taking back 0.2 of a second every lap, and of course he's still well above the schedule that he planned to ride, because people might think, well, he's not going to make it, but you're not going to do this if you have the idea that you're not going to make it. This is something that you plan, that you do for almost a year, with the idea that you can actually do this. And of course you didn't have to break the record with 100 meters or half a kilometer, but 15 meters would have been enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the fact that he is picking up his pace again multiple times just says that, he's not riding at his potential. Else you can't do that. Once you blow up your engine, you're just done. Yeah, I'm very curious. He seems to be able to maintain 52.8 about, and he's almost at the pace of Alex Dowsett. So there's everything to ride for, and this will be a phenomenal.
And Alex Dowsett is a world-renowned time trial
absolutely,
guy,
one of the best.
Rider.
Yeah, absolutely.
So of course he's not going to make it, which is pretty sad, and he will be devastated. But I think he knew pretty soon into this race that this would not be feasible. This would not be achievable. Of course, we cannot put everything down to the weather, to the pressure around this velodrome, but it's a big factor. If you look at the world record, for example, on the pursuit, you know that the weather in Melbourne for Jack Bobridge was
exceptional. I think it was in Sydney.
Sydney was exceptionally well.
Yeah, they had hurricane danger,
exactly.
So very low air pressure, and I think also Rowan Dennis rode 4:13 there. It's already a while ago. Jack Bobbish with that legendary record of 4:11, I think, or 10 maybe. He actually also did an hour record attempt, and he started with lap times in the 15 seconds, just to say, you know.
Which is incredible. He's stranded at 51.3.
Dion on his bars again.
Yeah, he must be cramping.
Yeah, absolutely. The pressure on his shoulders, on his neck perhaps, it's just immense.
Well, just take a chair, just take one of your kitchen chairs and try to be on your elbows for an hour, which is hugely uncomfortable, but also you have to push a gear which is bigger than most sprinters use in a Tour de France stage.
Yeah, it's also a gear bigger for him. His cadence is too low for his ideal circumstances.
And you can see his front ring, it's huge. It's a 58. I think Tony Martin wrote a time trial with a 15.8 once. Must have been in Qatar or Dubai or something pan flat like that. But it's no mean feat. It's really, really, really tough for this guy.
So the fastest guy ever on a bike over an hour was, of course, Chris Boardman, and he rode 56.37 kilometers. But that was, of course, in the Superman position.
Yeah, and that is something that is not allowed anymore. We've got certain errors in this hour record business.
Yeah, we can basically say 4 eras, where the first one was the traditional riding positions, where, for example, Eddy Merckx did his attempt. Then you went to the non-traditional riding positions. You know, maybe we can remember Graham Aubrey with his hand tucked under his chest, very, very special position. And also Francesco Moser on his bullhorn handlebars. And also Indurain and Rominger broke the record in that time, although you could say that Rominger, maybe his record was quite similar to the position as we see today.
And it was quite a conventional bike as well.
Exactly.
It was not a real...
No, exactly. So, and he rode 55.29, so that was actually a very special record. Then we go to the 1997 rule change, where the UCI said, yeah, you got to have the same equipment as Merckx, and that was called the absolute record. And then now we have the unified hour record, and those are within the time trial positions, as we also see in the Tour de France, for example.
Some people are asking, why is Tom Dumoulin not trying this one?
That would be phenomenal. Please do. Well, the thing is, you know, Tom Dumoulin has a lot of goals already. You know, think about the Giro and the Tour. It's definitely a guy that I think we all would love to see to give this a crack. But, you know, there's just a lot of preparation involved. And Dumoulin is not a track rider, so he would need to, you know, it would take a lot of time for him.
Yeah, but that's also something that we saw with Thomas Dekker, for example, who was also a great rider, but not a track rider. And he was kind of swaying all over the track. He didn't keep his lines.
No, exactly. That's one. That's a very important component. Actually, in the case of Dekker, they did the attempt too early, because Jim was saying, you know, the same coach that is doing the hour record of Dion, that he was still improving at the time of the record. So, you know, also Dekker is a guy that possibly could have gone faster.
Lap times are considerably going up at the moment, 17.35, which means that the speed that we're going to achieve, the distance that we're going to achieve, is going up as well. 52.78, which is still very interesting, but...
last 5 minutes, Jose. Last 5 minutes.
The playlist that Dion designed himself on Spotify, you can find it on Twitter as well. And I think we've come to a very special song about his football club. About Ajax.
I think that's his last song, no?
I think it's his last song. Ajax is, of course, the football club in Amsterdam.
For some motivation.
They are playing at the moment as well, so he cannot watch that match. But I think we have come to the last song.
You know what his attempt reminds me of? Maybe some people are familiar with that, with the Misogi challenge, and that's something Japanese where you find your limit. You set a challenge for yourself, and the chances have to be less than 50% to make it. That's one of the biggest criteria for Misogi challenge. But this is really just
It's not something
lifetime
No,
achievement.
it's not something that I will be trying anytime soon. We are going towards 50K, which is a huge achievement.
Almost done for Dion. Fortunately for him, his mouth must be tasting like glue. The air, of course.
It's that taste of blood that you have in your mouth after a thing like this, and I think they're just gonna have to lift him off his bike.
Probably, yeah.
He will not be able to stand up. He's over 100 seconds behind Bradley Wiggins. We can see that on the iPad, held by his coach, Tim van den Berg. But the last minutes are here. He's going towards 50K, 200 laps, but as we have discussed at the beginning, he needed to do 218 laps and a few meters more to break the record. So that is something that he will not be achieving, but doing 50K in an hour is something that we can all admire. There are not many men in the world that can do this. The world hour record for women is currently held by Evelyn Stevens. She set the record in 2016 in Colorado Springs in the United States, 47.98 kilometers for Evelyn Stevens. But that is something that might be attempted, hopefully, by, why not Chloe Dygert?
Oh, but she's really a pursuer, eh? So
No, she can write time trials as well.
Yeah, she would be definitely a candidate.
I would like to see Chloe Dygert do
in
this.
the future.
Yeah, when she's a little bit older, but she's already amazing at the very tender age that she's still in. But if you saw that world record she did on the pursuit in Apeldoorn on sea level, imagine what she can do here.
But let's focus on this guy. It's just riding home for him now. It's really, I can't imagine the agonizing pain he is in right now. You really need mighty legs for this attempt. Last 2 minutes.
He's going to do 52.
He's going to have the fifth time.
I think it's the fifth time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. We can all remember perhaps the record of Jens Vogt, and that was actually 51.1 years age.
Yeah.
So that's still a big difference.
It was 43 at the time.
He already has beaten that distance. We can see it on the top here. Currently 51.5 kilometers.
So that means that he has not beaten the record or the time, the distance set by Thomas Dekker, his fellow Dutchman. But he will be doing that. He will be doing that. So he will beat Thomas Dekker's distance.
Mom should be proud. If we talk about the total amount of laps, we see it above in the screen. He's done 207 laps so far. Bradley Wiggins did 218 laps, Jose, in 1 hour. Amazing.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is some lap time that he's doing at the moment.
Last minute.
He's picking up the speed. He's pushing everything that he's got left.
He's on schedule again.
He's on schedule again. It's a bit late in the last minute of the hour, but hey, props to him. 16.7. That is basically what he should have ridden for an hour. He can do it for his last lap. Final 30 seconds for Dion Beukeboom.
Come on, Dion.
And he's now past what Thomas Dekker has done. 52.5. Which will bring him just past Rowan Dennis.
Yeah, by 200 meters.
Yep.
Almost a lap.
Yep. Will he make this lap? He will make this lap on the dot. 52.75, which is the 5th distance ever ridden in the modern era, as we can say.
He's still going, huh?
The time is up. The distance that we see on top of the screen, the official distance, 52 kilometers, 757 meters.
Yeah, you
52 kilometers, 757 meters is what Dion Beukeboom did. The 5th distance of all time, just 200 meters shy of Alex Dowsett, 250 meters shy of Tom Zerbel, and about 500 meters shy of Martin Toff Madsen. But of course, a lot of meters shy of what Bradley Wiggins did. So that record is safe for now. We know that Alex Dowsett is going to try again. He hasn't set a time, something that he also needs to discuss with his team, of course. But This was an unsuccessful attempt on the UCI Hour Record
And
timed
still,
by
we have
Tissot.
to congratulate him.
I think so, yes. I think so.
And I would love to see, you know, more riders attempting this record, because it's just an amazing discipline. It's, yeah, it's really a king's discipline, if it's up to me. Unfortunately, you know, I think he missed about 2 kilometers or close to 2 kilometers, which is a lot.
I think he's drooling. He is
You think
drooling.
so?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't
I think
blame him.
nobody's going to
blame
blame you for it.
We're going to clean him up a little bit for the camera. We're going to have a short quote by Dion, which is of course a very difficult thing to do, because he's
able
pretty
to?
disappointed, and now somebody has to take him off the bike. He says thanks to the people who came to watch him, but this man tried for 9 months, 10 months he's been doing this. This has been his main focus for 10 months almost. And
yeah, he's been fourth in the National Time Trialist Championships in Holland, in front of likes as Jos van Emden, who has won a
time trial, the World Tour level.
Exactly,
Several.
in the Giro. So, you know, he's really a phenomenal time trialist, and I would hope that as a result from this hour record, he might, you know, get a contract at a big team.
Maybe this kickstarts what is going to be possible. They're going to clean him up a little bit. He's going to drink, because for an hour you cannot drink, of course.
He's
Yeah, they
actually
have
he's reasonably fit, huh?
Well, they have to take the bike underneath him, from underneath him.
Helmet off. His temperature is really high. That's also why he shaved his head. It's better to regulate his temperature.
If you Google some pictures of him, you will know that he has very long, blonde, curly hair. It's its trademark.
Could you see the marks on his head from the helmet, huh?
This man has given everything, and everything was 52 kilometers, 757 meters. That was everything that he had in him today. The weather was not optimal, of course. They had hoped for lower air pressure around the velodrome here in Aguascalientes, but that was not to be. We have to make do with the circumstances on the day. There's also a little bit of luck involved. Look at the pursuit record by Jack Bobridge. Of course, he was lucky that there was a tropical storm going on at that moment. But this is a phenomenal attempt. It's a Dutch national record, that's for sure. He did 500 meters more than Thomas Dekker did. And this guy has done something incredible. But there were 4 guys in the world who've done something a little bit more incredible. And that's the thing with the hour record. It's very honest. It's about meters, and he has not beaten it.
No, I'm very curious to the analysis of the movement scientist Jim, his coach. You know, what went wrong? Of course, that's not very interesting at the moment. He looks disappointed, as I know him. But I think, you know, I hope he's not going to stay with that feelings and those sensations for a long time, because it's.
I do hope that there's a team for him at pro-continental level that sees the potential in this guy, because if you need somebody who can ride really fast for a certain amount of time to take back, for example, a breakaway, this is a guy that can be absolutely very useful.
He still looks reasonably fresh, Jose.
He was born in February 1989. And of course, he's disappointed.
Leading up to this event.
Let's just hear what they are saying. This was it for today, his coach says. He says, I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. We said before, our preparation was perfect. But we didn't come to Mexico to do 52.7. just discusses some physical problems that disable him from putting full power on one of his legs. And he just doesn't understand why and what has happened. But he thanks his coach. Of course, they've been in this together.
Finally a hug.
Yeah.
Working together for a whole year. Yeah, great work by these guys.
I don't think there's a new attempt scheduled at the moment.
Well,
Of course,
you're not going to do that in the 10 minutes after you did an attempt.
No, but I mean by some other rider.
Oh,
There's
right,
nothing
yeah.
planned at the moment.
What about Tony Martin?
Oh, why not? Maybe his new team, his new Dutch team, will allow him to do that. Oh, tears. Mum's crying.
Not a lot of crowds.
Fortunately, we cannot hear what they're discussing at the moment, so I cannot translate that for you.
Emotions kicking in. Friends and family. Yeah, and I think the name of this project, Breaking the Impossible, was actually very suitable.
Yeah, very aptly chosen.
It was impossible.
Let's
indeed.
hear what he's saying. He's in the dark about what happened and why he didn't succeed. And of course, there's going to be a thorough evaluation. But this is the disappointment of an athlete who's been working towards a goal for a certain amount of time, a pretty long amount of time, almost a year. And he didn't succeed. And of course, Dion is an athlete and he wants to win. And today he did not. So the disappointment is obvious. People there giving him some applause.
Yeah, and if you want to know the feeling of an hour attempt like this, just take a long climb once and give it your all in an hour, then you then you know the feeling. It's just a constant pressure on your legs.
Well, today, breaking the impossible has proven to be impossible. I think we're going to have a little quote by Dion, and then we're going to leave you on this UCI Hour Record timed by Tissot.
Ja, want Nina niet.
Well, it's a very intimate moment that we're sharing here with
Finally a
with
laugh.
Dion. Some relief. Okay, we're going to wait for what he has to say. He has to get his thoughts together and give us a little quote, and then we're going to leave you.
Als je even 1 seconde hebt, dan heb je even een shirt.
Dion, is niet gelukt, best wel maximaal.
Ja, vandaag wel. Zeker.
Dus meenemen in je race, wat verliep er niet volgens plan?
What didn't go according to plan?
Nou, ten eerste denk ik dat we gewoon een fantastisch jaar gehad hebben met dit hele team.
I think we had a great year with the team.
Ja, weet je, in de voorbereiding zit het niet.
Our preparation was
dit
good.
is gewoon wat er vandaag in zit.
It's just what was
ik denk dat
possible
het niet
today.
de beste prestatie is die ik
een uur kan
I don't
leveren.
think this is the best that I can
dit is
do
wat
on
het
an hour,
vandaag is.
but
En,
this is what it is today.
Het besef moet nog een beetje komen dat het ook best wel iets is om trots op te zijn
I
natuurlijk.
do need to come to terms with the fact that this is something that I can be proud of.
We zijn weggegaan op het schema van Wiggins.
We left on the Wiggins schedule.
En, ja, ik denk dat ik het een kwartier onder controle had en daarna is het gewoon...
I had everything under control for about 15
ja,
minutes.
kwartier een leidersweg
And then it was a
geworden
45 minutes suffering.
Zeker omdat het niet is waar je voor aan het trainen bent. Weet
this
je
is
wel.
not what we trained
Kijk,
for.
eigenlijk het hele traject. Ja, wees erop dat we het record hadden kunnen breken.
The
En als je
entire
ziet wat
road
er vandaag
towards this
staat, is dat
moment
geen afspiegeling
indicated
van,
that we could
van
have
het
broken the record, but
En daar baal ik van.
we didn't. And
het lichaam
I'm not
werkte
happy
vandaag
about
gewoon
that.
niet helemaal mee. En,
The weather was not
ja,
to
dan
my
is het heel
advantage
erg
today,
moeilijk om je kop er ook bij te
and that
houden.
makes it very difficult mentally as
En
well.
nogmaals, het is een fantastisch jaar geweest.
But it's been a
Ik wil
great year,
iedereen bedanken.
and I need to thank a lot of people, the sponsors.
Maar ja, meer nog Jim en vrienden
But Jim,
en familie.
my friends, my family.
Het was gewoon een fantastische trip op deze
It has been a great journey.
Ja, het bleef natuurlijk een leuke prestatie. Voor Peter ook het record van Thomas Dekker. Je bent Nederlands beste, de 5e tijd. Voelt dat nu nog als een troost?
You broke the Dutch record, 5th time ever. Is that something that makes you happy now?
Ik ben gewoon blij dat het erop zit.
No, I'm
en,
just happy it's done.
Ja, misschien komt het besef morgen.
Maybe I will realize that tomorrow. That's the 5th time ever.
Ja, nogmaals.
But again,
de weg hier naartoe was
the journey towards this day has been
ik had het
fantastic.
graag anders af willen
But I
sluiten, maar,
would have liked to conclude it a little bit differently.
Ja,
but
dit is wat het vandaag
this is what it is today.
En nu? Wat ga je nu doen?
And what's
Blijf je
next?
wielrenner? Ga je je studie afronden?
Are you going to finish your education? I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do.
Dank je.
Yeah. Of course, there's this moment that he needs to come to terms with the fact that he did the 5th time ever. But at this point at time, the disappointment is paramount, and we cannot blame him for that.
No, he also has no idea what he's going to do next. I already spoke with Jim about that, and he said, yeah, you just have to focus on this attempt and not think about what is going to happen if I make it, what is going to happen if I don't make it. Yeah, here we got the result. I think it's a fantastic distance.
Well, there's a big smile. This is how we know this guy, with a big smile and his beautiful blonde curly hair. It's been an emotional journey. You could see the tears in his eyes. This is something that you do together with the team, with Jim, who's emotional as well. But it's like it is.
Nee, het is ook nog steeds mogelijk.
Jim still thinks it's possible. His coach.
We zijn vandaag niet dichtbij geweest.
It sounds funny because we haven't been even
dat
close.
zeiden we eigenlijk ook een half uur voordat Dion de baan in ging.
Half an hour before we started
We
this.
hebben gewoon een perfecte voorbereiding
Our preparation
gehad.
was perfect.
We hadden vandaag niet de ideale omstandigheden waarop we
The circumstances were not ideal. It's not what we hoped for, but
daarom hebben we hier ook de lamp aangezet.
that's why we turned on the lights here to
ja, dit is
increase
niet
the
waar we voor
temperature. But
kwamen.
this is not what we
Daar
came
moeten we
for.
eerlijk in zijn.
Breaking the Impossible, de titel van het project.
The title of the
Niet
project
gelukt.
was
Wat
Breaking the
betekent het voor jou
Impossible.
Nog een keer proberen.
I want to try it again.
Ja, dat zou mijn volgende vraag zijn. Zien we je weer? Bijvoorbeeld in een Tom Dumoulin?
Nou, wie weet, als hij wil. Maar,
Well, if Tom Dumoulin is up for it,
kijk,
maybe.
we weten natuurlijk wel dat het daarom noemden we het ook Breaking the Impossible. Het is een heel bijzonder record.
It's a very special
maar ik weet
record.
dat het
That's
op
why we
hoogte,
call it Breaking the
en ik weet ook
Impossible.
dat het met Dion, en ik zeg net ook
But I
tegen
know
Dion van
that
wij twee zijn de enige nu wellicht die
could have
weten
done it.
dat het erin gezeten heeft. Want
we know
vandaag
that this
zijn we er gewoon niet
could
in de
have
buurt
been possible.
geweest.
We haven't been close.
En dat is kloten, want we wilden
that
graag iedereen
sucks.
laten zien dat Dion het kon.
We wanted to show the world that
En dat is vandaag niet
it was
gelukt.
possible, but we didn't succeed.
Maar ja, dat is sport.
But that's sports.
Dat klopt. En nu?
And what's next?
En nu gaat er heel wat van ons afvallen, denk ik. Want het is een heel
Now a
lang project
burden
geweest.
is off our shoulders.
En ik bedoel, er hebben ook subdoelen gezeten. Hij is 4 op het Nederlands kampioenschap
There were also
gereden.
other targets. He came in 4th at the Dutch Time Trial Championships.
Hij heeft een geweldig seizoen
He had a
gehad.
great season
Maar
on
het
the
ging
road,
natuurlijk
but
hierom.
this was the moment, this was the time that we wanted to do it.
En nu even niks.
And now nothing. But Jim van den Berg, the coach, is still very much concerned that positive that it's possible.
Yeah, he's very competitive right after the finish.
He was a very competitive rider, and he's a very competitive coach as well. We're going to conclude this this UCI Hour Record timed by Tissot. 52 kilometers, 757 meters is what this Dutch guy did. This is it. He didn't succeed. The record of Sir Bradley Wiggins, 54 kilometers, 526 meters, still stands. Who knows for how long? Who knows who the next challenger will be? But if there's going to be a next challenger, of course, we will show you the UCI Hour Record attempt, because it's a very prestigious record. And I know that there's some guys out there who've got this idea in their head, and maybe we'll try an attempt in the foreseeable future.